Good morning,
Good morning.
everyone. Welcome to Amazon Career Day 2020. I'm looking for my presentation just real quick. There we go. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have a few folks that have joined us live, and in interest of time, we're excited to get an opportunity to speak with you all today. Um, we have a great lineup of content to present to you today. You are joining us today for our entry-level code review session. We're calling it the ACE the interview, ACE your technical interview today. And so with that, I'm going to jump into our agenda for the morning. We're going to talk a little bit about how we recruit. First, we're going to do some introductions. We're going to talk about how we recruit, a little bit more about your resume, how we interview for the SDE1 engineering role specifically. Here at Amazon, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into our online assessment demo. Cyril, who's joining me live today, will also be doing a quick introduction, and he'll dive deep with us today, giving us an overview of the online assessment and do a practice coding question with you all. And then we'll wrap up with some key takeaways and do some Q&A. So we do have a chat room available for Q&A. Feel free to say hello, give us a quick shout out, and ask any questions. I'll be moderating the chat room throughout the session, and we'll take questions during that Q&A session, and we'll answer those live. So with that, why don't we go ahead and do some introductions? I can start us off. My name is Lydia Hernandez, and I am a student programs recruiter here at Amazon, where my focus is on the software development engineer. We call that SDE here for short at Amazon. I have the privilege of working with students in their undergraduate and their graduate programs and helping them find their way to Amazon. And as much as I love the opportunity to meet you all in person and connect with you live. I still do appreciate that we can have these conversations even here on Career Day from our living rooms or from our own spaces at home. And so thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to learn more about our technical roles and our opportunities here at Amazon. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Cyril for his quick introduction.
Thanks, Lydia. Hello, everyone. Good day. I don't know what, it might be different times of the day we are. My name is Cyril Acholo. I'm a software engineer here at Amazon. I work in AWS on the S3 team. I've been at Amazon about 3 years now, so enjoying every bit of it. I went to Howard University in Washington, D.C. For my undergrad, HU, for anybody who's on the line. And yeah, I'm here to support the session today and kind of provide information about what the coding tool and the session would look like for interviewees. So thanks, Lydia, and back to you.
Thanks, Cyril. So Cyril will join us back later in the session. We're going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about how we recruit. Here at Amazon, I want to be able to provide you with some information about what the recruiting process and the timeline typically looks like for our opportunities. Essentially, you're going to want to apply on our website. Amazon.jobs is our main career center, or career page, I should say, where all of our opportunities are listed. I want to highlight that for student programs in particular, we do have a section within our .jobs website that's really focused on student opportunities. So I would encourage any student that is looking for opportunities specifically for new grads or even for internships to kind of go in and explore more within the student programs portal or section of the careers website, and there you'll see tons of opportunities that are specifically targeted for students. In terms of the application, things to be mindful of, a majority of our roles are in Seattle, where headquarters is, but there are opportunities to preference any locations for certain roles. For the SDE one role for student programs, there are some opportunities outside of Seattle, and you're able to indicate your top 3 preferences at the time of application. So I want to take a look at that to make sure that you are able to preference those locations. And then in terms of the next step after that, you're going to go through an application review. Applications are typically reviewed on a rolling basis. In terms of timeline here, it does take a little bit of time to get through that process of the application review. But if you are successful and you meet those basic qualifications or those preferred qualifications, that you are then invited to the online assessment. We're going to talk a little bit more about that online assessment as Cyril is going to present an overview of the platform and practice a question live with you today, but anticipate an online assessment as part of the process. There are 3 parts to that assessment, and we'll dive deep there as well in terms of what that looks like. After the assessment, you're essentially invited, if you are successful with it, you're invited to a virtual interview. We've been virtual for a while here at Amazon, at least in our terms of our student programs opportunities. So you'll log on, just kind of like how you are logged on today, and you'll interview with an interviewer. If you're a full-time candidate, you can anticipate 3 45-minute interviews. And if you are a intern candidate, you can anticipate 1 45-minute interview. And then typically 5 days after that, we do let you know what your outcome is. Let's talk a little bit about your resume and what we're looking for here. For our SCE roles, we don't accept a cover letter. So we want you to spend a little bit more time on ensuring that your resume is polished and your contact information is up to date and that you're all set in terms of presenting yourself really well on paper. So we're going to focus on the resume a little bit more versus focusing time on the cover letter. And in terms of some tips here for what we can suggest for students is to be yourself. Don't be a form letter. Be specific to the role that you're applying to. So if you're specifically interested in the software development engineer position, let's talk about some of those, or let's share those experiences that you might have that are relevant to the role. So we want to see any coursework that you take in, whether it's data structures and algorithms. Where are you in your coursework in your computer science major or whatever your major is that's relevant to the role? And so talk about to highlight those coursework, highlight any projects that you may have worked on, any internships that might be specific to the roles. We love seeing that. If you are a CS 101 teaching assistant, like put that on there. We want to see that. So make sure that you're specific, that you're relevant, and you're tying all your experiences to the job that you're applying for. So that's what we want to see. Do your research in the sense that you want to know what the role is, what you might be doing. So pay attention to that job description and pay attention to the basic qualifications, but even more, pay attention to the preferred qualifications. You want to stand out. So we want to see target for those preferred qualifications. And if there's a gap there, find a way to work backwards to get yourself meeting those preferred qualifications. And then in terms of the education information, what really is important here for us is that you make sure you indicate that anticipated graduation month and year. This really helps us determine your eligibility for full-time and internship positions. Sometimes applicants get confused and they don't know if they should be applying for the internship versus the full-time. One pro tip that I can share with students is specifically for the internship, what we really want to make sure is that you're returning back to school after the internship is done. So if you're looking for a summer internship with us for next summer, the question you want to ask yourself is, do I plan to go back to school after the internship ends? And if the answer is yes, then you're certainly an intern eligible candidate. If the answer is no, you've already graduated before the internship starts or during the internship, then you're not internship eligible. You're more of a full-time candidate. So you want to be looking at that specifically. Okay, let's move forward and talk a little bit more about how we interview. Again, as I mentioned during that timeline slide, we are looking for an online assessment opportunity in the process. And so what that really means is we want to assess your technical ability. And we do that through our online assessment. And so there are 3 parts to the assessment that you should be aware of. Part 1 is a code debug. Part 2 is a coding and a work style assessment, and part 3 is a simulation and a logical ability. What we're looking for in the online assessment is really your ability to debug, your ability to understand and address compilation, logical, and syntactical errors. Do you have those basic programming constructs and data structures and algorithms knowledge? And if so, we want to see you showcase that through the online assessment. We don't require that you know any specific programming language. Before taking or before doing the assessment, you are actually able to decide what language you want to code in or debug in. And so you don't need to worry about that. There are some options there. Just really focus on demonstrating that technical aptitude, that technical skills, particularly in the code debug and in the coding section. The work style assessment is here's what we're really asking you to choose the extent to which a statement represents your work style. For instance, we may ask you which of the two statements you or describes you best. The question might be, I like for things to be clearly structured, or I look forward to the opportunity to learn things to learn new things. And so when you ask if or that statement, which one best describes you, we're really just trying to understand the authentic you. And then in terms of the work or the simulation part, it's essentially a simulation of a day in the life of an SDE, and how do you problem solve? How do you solve a customer question? Again, just simulating what you might experience in the role, and then from there, how do you kind of move forward? How do you solve that problem? So we're just really wanting to understand you. So don't spend too much time. Don't really stress over a lot of the simulation types of questions. I would say really focus on the debugging and the coding part, truly to exercise and demonstrate your technical aptitude. Our leadership principles is something that you should be mindful of. We have 14 of them. They are assessed, and they are our North Star, if you will, here at Amazon. And as a student, you will be assessed or against some of the leadership principles. I'm here to tell you that you've demonstrated some of these leadership principles even as a student. Learn and be curious. You're doing that on a daily basis. You're earning trust. You have bias for action. You deliver results. You have ownership. Think about those experiences as a student, whether it was through your internship, through classwork, projects, and how you've been demonstrating that moving forward or as a student. And talk about those experiences, because you will be asked about those during your interview. So take some time to learn a little bit more about them and be able to come up with some concrete examples on how you've demonstrated them throughout your experience, because they will come up during the behavioral-based interview. So once you've completed that online assessment, you're invited to that virtual interview. And here's really where we're going to be assessing some behavioral-based interview types of questions. So start familiarizing yourself with behavioral-based interview type questions. The Career Center is a really great resource, and career advisors are great resources here. We're really testing or really want to understand your soft skills and how do you deal with ambiguity, how are you flexible, how do you show forward thinking and or display resourcefulness. So think about those examples of how you've demonstrated those leadership principles, and then become familiar on how do you want to showcase that experience. And we have a framework that we really encourage students to model answering behavioral based questions, and that's called the STAR method. Most of you might be familiar with the STAR method. It is a structured method of responding to these types of interview questions. What we really want you to do is be successful with the way you respond to the question. And so I think the STAR method is a great framework to leverage. If you're not familiar with it, let me briefly explain to you what that means. Each letter of STAR stands for something. The S stands for the situation, where we want you to describe the situation that you were in. The T stands for task, what goal you were working towards. A is action, describing the actions you took to address those situations. And then R is the result, the outcome of your actions. And then don't be shy about taking credit for your behavior. That's something that a lot of students do struggle with. We want you to be the star in your example. And if there's an opportunity for you to highlight what actions you took, definitely highlight that. And if there's not a great story, or if the story doesn't end on a happy note, and maybe let's say you missed the deadline, or the project didn't end up the way you really wanted it to, that's okay. Still talk about that, and maybe how you reflected on that situation and what you would do differently. But the STAR method is a great opportunity for you to leverage during a behavioral-based interview. So some quick interview tips before we kind of dive into the online assessment. We're going to practice that STAR method I just talked about, making sure that you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Have some specific examples that showcase those experiences. Always feel free to follow up if you need clarification. We get nervous, we get tense during those interview moments, and it's okay to ask for follow-up questions and make sure that you understand the question, or if you need more examples of what the interviewer is asking for, totally fine. Feel free to ask questions for the interviewer as well. We always leave some time at the end for you to ask questions. And so please use that time to ask an interviewer anything you like about their experience, about their professional growth, about whatever is on your mind. You're always interviewing the employer as well. So we're interviewing you, you're interviewing us. So take that moment to really ask some specific questions to the interviewer. All right. The meat of today's discussion or workshop is really for you all to learn more about that online assessment and what you can anticipate. So I'm going to turn it over to Cyril now for a demonstration of our platform and to solve a coding question with you live today. So take it away, Cyril.
Thanks, Lydia. So let me get my screen up here. Okay, so this is the Aspiring Minds platform that is used for the online assessment. I should point out that there are some initial steps before you get to this phase in the process, where it requires you to sign in and identify there's going to be an image capture that is taken so that they can verify your identity, some authentication, and so on and so forth. But then you end up on this page. This is like kind of where the actual meat of the assessment begins. This is your test ID. It's advised that you copy it and keep it safe. If you get logged out of the session, you're going to need it to log back in. So you definitely wanna keep that somewhere. And then it just gives you general instructions about the browser requirements and what you need for running the Aspiring Minds platform. You will have 2 questions and 70 minutes to answer both. There's, again, your test ID. You want to make sure that you manage your time. So this is just general information about taking the test. So you have 70 minutes. Once the timer starts, it does not stop. So you want to be careful to manage your time between both questions. You have a choice of languages between Java, Python, Python 3, C++, C#. I will point out that when you select a language and start working with it, if you decide to switch midway through the problem, it will actually reset your solution. So you definitely want to be mindful of that. It's better to kind of decide what language you'll be going with and then go through all the way. I mean, you can always switch, but just be aware that you would lose any progress you already made up to that point. Once you're done, submit your answer. Obviously, you don't want to do all the work and not turn anything in. But once you submit, you won't be able to revise the change and, of course, manage your time wisely. Okay, so I just got timed out of that window. So this is the test page. You have an option to do a demo. It will walk you through all the features, but I'm going to do that anyway. So I'll just skip this. So the first thing is the problem. You want to make sure you read through that carefully, capture all your requirements, etc., etc. So we'll do that in a second, but I'm just going to walk through the other features of this page. The next tab is test cases. So this will provide tests that you can run against your code. Once you have everything put together, you can compile and test that your code is working as expected, and the output will be displayed in this tab. This is the compile and run button that basically compiles your code and outputs. It's failing. We haven't put any code in there yet, so we'll get to that in a second. This is a reset button that just wipes the window. Basically, whatever you have in the code window will be reset. You have a save button, although the platform will save your solution automatically every 30 seconds, something like this. So, but if you want to do that anyway, you have that option. You have the option of dark mode if you want to, and these are just to toggle your window. So there, we kind of have partitioned window right now with the solution on one end and the problem statement on the other. You can maximize or one or the other, or toggle both as you wish. So the main things, the language selection here. So again, Java, C++, Python, C#, and Python 3. and the timer, which you should be aware of. So to track your work on the problem. Okay, so with that, we will dive right in. And again, you have two problems. Yeah, you have two problems to solve, so you want to be aware of that and kind of maximize your time spent on both, or decide to do one versus the other if you think it's going to be quicker, etc. So this problem is Amazon is building a way to help customers search reviews quicker by providing real-time suggestions to search terms when the customer starts typing. Okay, so this is a kind of autocomplete feature for a search window. When given a minimum of 2 characters in the search field, the system will suggest those 3 keywords from the review word repository. Okay, as the customer continues to type in. Okay, so at this point, you want to just kind of start capturing what the question is asking for. I think this is always a good idea. You kind of try to capture what the key requirements of your problem statement are. So I'm just going to start with minimum 2 characters in inputs, I guess in query. Customer continues to type in the reviews. The relevant keyword suggestions will update automatically, but an algorithm that will output a maximum of 3 keyword suggestions. So it's a requirement, maximum 3 keywords in output. After each character is typed by the customer in the search field. If there are more than 3 acceptable keywords, return the keywords that are first in alphabetical order. Okay, so we want, this is another requirement, we want the return values sorted, basically. And only return keyword suggestions after the customer has entered 2 characters. Okay, we already said that. Keyword suggestions must start with the character. It's autocomplete, so it should match already input characters. Okay. Both the repository and customer query should be compared in a case insensitive. Case insensitive. Like I type. And okay, that's it. So now we get to the input and output. So the input is the number of reviews. Okay, that's the number of keywords from the review section. Okay, the repository is a list of unique strings, which is the actual reviews, and the query is the customer input, basically. And then the output should be a list of strings, where each list represents the keyword suggestion made by the system as the customer types each character. Assume the customer types characters in order without any characters. Okay, so that kind of simplifies things. We're assuming that once the customer starts typing, they kind of keep going. They don't go back and revise their query. And if an output is not possible, return an empty array. Okay, good. So a good way to start here is, I can get rid of all this. You want to just make sure that your everything you have set up compiles. So we have the output should be a list of strings. I'll call this output. Okay. And return output. Okay. So you compile array lists. Oh yeah. So another thing, if you're using a language like Java, where you have to do a lot of work, you want to make sure that you actually import the libraries that you need. So Did I mistype that? I did. Okay. Okay, so now we can see that it actually compiles. The output is wrong because we haven't done anything. But yeah, so that's where we want to start. Okay, so now basically you want to think about what your problem solution is going to be, right? As an engineer, you don't just dive in and start writing code, right? You kind of want to work through what approach you're going to take. This is even more important in the on-site interview where you're actually talking to an interviewer. You don't want to just start coding. You want to show them that you take the time to consider multiple solution approaches, or you can even just start with a brute force solution approach. But you want to discuss it with the interviewee. Have that back and forth where you exchange ideas. They might give you feedback. They might suggest alternatives you to consider, et cetera, et cetera. So for this, I'm basically going to just take the first two characters of input, match to terms from repository, which should be sorted. And return available matches, and then iterate with more characters, basically. Okay, so I think that should work. Yeah, so this platform has like the typical IDE features, like you can do multi-line comments. You can do, as you've seen from my typing so far, it does provide like linting and autocomplete. So you have those features as well available to you. So, all right, so we have the general approach defined. Let's start with, okay. So I'm gonna make these into methods. I'm gonna say string equals customer customer query dot substring, do 0 to 2. Actually, I want to do this in a loop so I don't have to keep resetting that variable. So I'm going to say for int I equals 2, I less than or equal to customer query not length. Okay, and I'm just doing this so I don't have to keep updating the query index, the substring index, basically. String subquery is going to be the value, and then so I get the first two characters. I'm going to match it to the repository. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to sort this repository. Oh, okay, let me just check that everything compiles so far. Missing return statement. Oh, I didn't close my for loop here. Okay, so it still compiles, that's good. Before I do this, I want to sort my my repository, I'm just going to cheat and use collection sort. We know that library function is already available, so I might as well take advantage of it. And that should be fine. You want to, oh, cannot find some. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to do this so that I don't have to keep importing every time. It's good practice as an actual engineer to not do star imports so you don't bog your program. But in this case, it's just an interview question, so it's fine. Okay, so that's fine. So, okay, that's sorted. Now what I want to do is, okay, so I get the substring, and next I want to match the terms from the repository to the substring. So for this, I'm just going to create a function, separate function here. I'm going to call this return this to strings, match query to repo. I'm going to pass a string, that's the query. I'm going to pass the repository, which is a list of strings as well. Okay, so that's basically, let's have results. Okay, I'm just going to return. Okay, and what I want to do here is call this method with my query substring, basically, and the repository. Right now it doesn't do anything, so that's not going to return anything, but that's abstraction of what I want to do for this step here. So I just create that method to keep track of that. Okay, so we have repository sorted, we have customer query substring, and we have matched the query. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is here is where I want to do the actual matching. So I'm going to say, okay, for entry, I wonder if I can use, yeah, let's see, entry in repository. If entry starts with query, add the entry. Okay. And then, ooh, sorry about that. I have a bee in my face. Okay, so status is wrong. Oh my gosh. So we're returning nothing still. Okay, so now you want to like start to check what's going on with your basically with your methods. So you want to like put output statements everywhere so you can take a look at what your code is doing, basically. So here I'm going to have an output just to make sure that I'm actually creating the substrings that I expect. Query substring. And here, maybe I don't want to output for every entry, so I'll just do this to begin with. Okay, And okay, so this is testing with hard. Okay, I see. All right. So yes, I'm missing a very vital step here, which is that we only want to return the first 3 entries. So I'm going to say if results size equals 3, and then I'm going to break out of this loop. Okay, so we have match. We have the query for string in the repository. Entry starts with the query, we add it to the result. If it's 3, we break out and we return. And so we return this here. We want to also add this to our output. Otherwise, we're just, sorry. Okay. And I can't do that before I actually initialize my output. So I'll do that there. Okay, so now we're seeing some correct results. Still not all the way there. We are passing 5 out of 15 tests. We turned a whole bunch of outputs here. So let's revisit these. Minimum of 2 characters. Maximum of 3 keywords, that's done. We want return value sorted. We've done that. We match already input characters. Yes, that's the case. Okay. Case insensitive. Okay. So yeah, good thing we documented those things. So now we can go back and check. So we want this matching to be done in a case insensitive manner. So I'm just gonna actually do a copy here of the repository so that we can copy case insensitive repository. You don't really have to give such descriptive names in the test. It's practice in actual engineering teams, so your code is readable. I mean, for the sake of this, the thing is to get the code to compile. But anyway, I'm just gonna do this anyway. So, and the input is gonna be another repository. So what we're gonna do is just return everything here in lowercase. String. Yeah, sure, why not? I'll call it entry again. And repository. So what I'm doing is I'm basically creating a copy of the original repository, but all lowercase, so that I can compare in a case insensitive manner. I'm also going to convert the query to when we do that. Oops, excuse me. So when we do that, it does not matter what the case is. I should return this. Okay. So now when I do, before I do this match to the query, I'm going to convert the repository into a lowercase repository. So I'm going to create another array here. Let's do this. Actually, make my life easier, I'm just going to call this the repository and change raw repository. So I don't have to change this everywhere else. So I'm going to sort this. Sure. And I'm going to make this, what did I call my method? Copy case insensitive repository. Call that with the raw repository. Save that. That should be fine. Okay. So, so now I have that, but I'm not doing that, using it yet in the match. So now I have my repository. I'm copying it. I'm using that here. The other thing I want to do is check my query and make that lowercase as well. So I can just do that here. Make sure those braces match. Yeah, I think we're missing one. Okay. Okay. Still 5 cases. So I might be missing something here. So we sort the raw repository, we copy it to the repository. And then for customer query entries from 2, right? Because we want a minimum of 2 characters input. We do the substring. Our substring is exclusive of the last element. And actually, we can see that. Okay, so we're always returning at least 2 characters. So we look at the tests. It says return baggage, bags, banner, baggage, bags. So Coddle's code. Okay. So this is good. Let's go back and see what we missed. So I can go back to the problem. And, okay, I see. If an output is not possible, we should return an empty array. It's a good one we missed. Return empty if no output, basically. So so when we create this, the first thing probably that we should check is that maybe before we do any of these, we say if output customer query is less than 2, we can just rule that out right away. Turn output. Right, so that should be empty at that point. And what else do we want? Here we have the output being a list, and for each return we add it. Okay, so check that. Excuse me. Still 5. Okay, interesting. So something else we can check here is the query length is too short. Let's see what happens if we have no reviews. If raw repository, guess the number of views should match, but let's just use this anyway. I think this should be size. So yeah, basically this is a matter of now like thinking about potential edge cases that may have been missed. Also, anything that's specified in the requirements that is not yet implemented. Just checking all those maximum 3 keywords in output. Want returned value sorted. Okay. So now we can do something here. Let's abstract this out into a separate method that we can call so that we can pass in our own test parameters and see what's going on. So we can call this string. We'll call this get output. Right, so now this is the method, and we'll pass it basically the same parameters that we passed from the original function argument. Another thing that's worth calling out here is that we don't have a main method in this setup. So basically, we're assuming that the main method is already set up somewhere else. You don't have to worry about that. You just have to like call the actual methods. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. If you don't see a main method, don't worry about it. We just assume that all this is getting called from there. So now we have this kind of method abstraction that we can test with. So now we can just call this with. We can create our own test set. So I'm going to create my own test repository. And I can use the example that provided. I can't copy those.
Cyril, I'm back on live only because we're running out of time.
Money pot.
Hey, Cyril, can you hear me?
Hey. Yes.
Hi, I'm back because we're running a little bit over time, and
okay.
wanted to just interject. I know you were really focused on that and showing our participants how to solve. That's totally fine. I think this just gives an example of how thorough we want to be and
right.
Really digest into the content of the question. And I think our participants really appreciate that. So thank you very much. I don't think we're going to be able to get through the whole solution during today's webinar, which is totally fine. I think it gave, again, participants an insight into what to anticipate for that. So I do want to move us forward in terms of the last half of the presentation, and we're really towards the end here. In terms of the key takeaways for everyone, we talked a lot about our resume, not having to have cover letters, really focusing on your on your resume, right? That's really what we want you to shine on paper. So dive deep on your resume, customize it, make it very applicable to the role that you're applying to, and focus a lot on your resume. And then in terms of how we interview, get to know our Amazon leadership principles. Start developing stories, examples of how you demonstrated leadership principles in your day to day as a student. Take some time on that online assessment, and take all parts of it, pretty seriously. Think about it as part of the process, and then do some research on our businesses. I think the Day One blog is a great resource for us, and I share that with students a lot because it talks a lot about what some of our lines of businesses are doing. You don't need to have everything memorized, but doing some research on our businesses is always great to bring into an interview as well. And then in terms of using a framework, we talked about the STAR method for those behavioral based questions. So definitely start practicing that STAR method for those interviews. We did run out of time for some Q&A, unfortunately, and I was monitoring the chat room. Great shout outs to you, Cyril, for really diving deep and helping students understand that online assessment. So really appreciate that. Want to end today with
Sorry about
encouraging you all, no worries, want to encourage you all to apply online. We have lots of opportunities right now through our student programs career site, and check out some of those opportunities. We are actively recruiting right now for our software development summer 2021 internship opportunity, as well as some full-time opportunities. So we look forward to your application, and we really want to thank you today for taking the time out to join us on Amazon Career Day 2020, and hope you can enjoy more of the content that we have lined up for you today. Thanks for joining. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.